What you're about to watch is one of the most insane business stories of all time. This is the journey of Spencer Jan, the co-founder of Solo Stove, taking it from scratch all the way to a $2 billion public exit. It's how it started, it's how it scaled, and all the trials, tribulations, and absolutely massive wins in between. Buckle in, this is one of my favorite business interviews of all time. Let's go. All right, so this is the inaugural episode in person on the channel, and what a doozy it is. Honestly and truly one of the coolest entrepreneurs in the physical products game. Spencer Jan has joined us. So dude, congratulations, my first ever in-person YouTube interview post-COVID. So It's good to have you here, man.
Yeah, good to be on.
So we're actually in Spencer's office just outside of Dallas. And honestly and truly, Spencer has one of the most incredible business stories I've ever heard, and I don't think a lot of people have heard it. So the purpose of this discussion today is really just to understand his story and how he built a company that literally had 3 exits within a 2-year period. 2 of those were 9-figure exits, and one of them was a multi-billion-dollar public exit on the public market. So Spencer, before we get into that craziness, which it really is a crazy and wild story, maybe give everybody a little tidbit as to who you are and kind of why we're chatting today.
Yeah, there's no grand story behind it. I grew up in Canada and went to school in Hawaii and in Utah at BYU, and really just like everyone else, just was seeking for that freedom, that escape from, the 9-to-5 grind, and just wanted my time back. And so that just led me into entrepreneurship. But yeah, got a couple kids, one in high school and one in middle school. And yeah, that's kind of just me, kind of a little bit boring.
Love it. And we didn't plan the Canadian interlude, by the way.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
We're both, I guess, Canadian, born and bred, although I think you've got a little bit more of a blended background in the U.S. than I do, but cool to have another Canuck on. So physical products, man, I mean, that's really a lot about what this channel is. We talk a lot about Amazon stuff and e-commerce in general, but physical products is an interesting universe, especially when you got into it a little bit earlier than I did. So maybe just like why physical products, how did that whole story start before we get into the big shebang stuff?
Yeah, in 2008, so I was working and living in Shanghai, working for a sourcing company. And we were sourcing all sorts of products. And when 2008 hit, 2008 was the whole financial crisis thing. And that just opened my eyes as to like how vulnerable we all are, right? And it got me thinking like, I gotta figure something out for myself. And I started playing online, and I actually started just blogging. So back then, 2008, it was like, my eyes were open to this world of blogging, and I was like, what? This is how like bloggers make money, like with ads and with affiliate marketing. And it just, to me, I have a liberal arts background, I don't have a business background, and I was sourcing products. And so this whole idea of blogging was just so new, and so like it felt like I just discovered something brand new, and it sucked me in and just started getting to the world of like how search engines work and how digital marketing works and how traffic works and SEO. And to me, it was like super refreshing. And so that's kind of like how I started to play online. And I blogged for a full year, and I didn't make any money. I made like $70, of which like 50 never got paid out because I didn't hit like the commission junction threshold. And I was like, but I learned a lot. I had learned a lot about digital marketing and SEO and content and traffic and understanding the analytics behind it. And I naturally just said like, well, this isn't working out. Like, what if I just sold something online? Because I was sourcing all these products. And in 2008, we had sourced mattresses for a company out of Washington called King's Mattress. And in 2008, they like stiffed us with a container of mattresses. Like, they didn't pay us because it was 2008. And I was like, oh, that business went down the drain. And I was like, I spent so much time learning about mattresses, like manufacturing, how everything's made, how foam is baked, and how all the layers are made, and all the coverings. And I was like, what a waste. Like, traditional trade, what a waste. And this is, on one side I was blogging, and the other side I was like, what a waste, I just learned all this stuff. I was like, wait a minute, what if I just sold these mattresses online? And so that was my foray into selling online, was just these mattresses, these memory foam mattresses, bed in a box, like way early. Yeah. And since I was living and
this
working,
is before Purple was a thing,
way,
and D2C mattresses was a thing.
Casper wasn't even around. So it was me selling mattresses in Shanghai because that's where I was living and working, and I would sell them to expats living in Shanghai. It was like the smallest niche you could ever imagine, but it was like soft beds for people who were looking for soft beds because the traditional like Chinese apartment came with like really hard beds. Okay. And so this was like perfect for them. And my friends wanted them, and I was like, okay, some people obviously want them. So I threw up a website that wasn't even on like, it wasn't a Shopify or a BigCommerce. It was a static because I knew how to build blogs. So I literally built a static blog, and it just had a form builder in there where they would enter in what they wanted and press like purchase, but it was actually sending me an email with the stuff they just filled in. And so I would get an email saying like, this is what they want. And then I would call them or email them and then start delivering mattresses at night. Yeah. That was the first foray into e-commerce.
Man, that's awesome. I mean, some of my favorite business stories, honestly, and it seems like a lot of the more successful entrepreneurs don't come from a business background. It's just like they almost stumble into it. And it sounds like, you got this liberal arts background, blogging, that didn't work out. But I would imagine back then, just help me understand a little bit more like the physical prox landscape. Was Alibaba really a thing there? Like, was it pretty opaque to source products?
Yeah.
In China at the time, if you weren't there living there?
Yeah, the e-commerce thing was definitely at the early days. Yeah. So I actually worked, the first job that took me to China was a company called Global Sources. And it was before Alibaba even came up. And so actually when I was working for Global Sources, we were selling advertising on their website and for their trade shows and for their trade magazines. And then Alibaba came up when I was working there, and they basically like crushed our company. And that was kind of the beginning of Alibaba. But back then, Alibaba back then was more so like trying to reach big US buyers. It wasn't like the small little stuff or guys just starting up an e-commerce store or something. So those were the early days. We sourced a lot of products for people selling physical products in the US, but they had traditional sales channels. And so it was really early in e-commerce. I mean, this is back when like Yahoo Stores was alive. Like that was the thing. It was like, do it on Yahoo Stores. And like even when Amazon had their own storefronts, it was back then. So it was really early, but yeah.
Cool. So a lot of folks on this channel have built Amazon-centric sales channel brands, and we talk a lot about that kind of channel on here. And you were like early. I mean, we talk about early days Amazon a lot, at least in my conversations, as like the 2014 to 2016 era. Like those are some of the early days Amazon folks that are still in the game. They've started to, a lot of them, exit or move on to other things. But you kind of started the expat kind of mattress business in China, which is kind of a crazy story unto itself. You then forayed into this broader landscape. You're like, hey, there's a bigger world out there than just expat mattresses in China. So talk through a little bit about that next wave into kind of global distribution, specifically on Amazon in the early days.
Yeah, so for mattresses, everything was working and I was making a ton of money. And then my brother, who was living in Texas, was like, well, what about me? We were doing this together. He was writing a blog at the same time. So we were both blogging, and I had started into physical goods, and he was like, well, wait, what about me? And I was like, pick anything sells. And so he picked gardening products, and we bought these plastic little covers that would go over seedlings, and we would buy them for like 10 cents a piece, and we package them into like a pack of 5 and sell them for like $9.99. And so he started doing that on the U.S. side, and so he had gardening going. And at that time, I had my other business partner in the sourcing company. We also started dabbling, like playing online as well. And so we started taking a lot of the products that we were sourcing for other companies, and we would kind of private label our own or take some of the brands that we had already built and started getting into Amazon and playing on Amazon. And we were selling on Amazon like 2009, 2010, when it was so easy. It was like printing money. You could put anything up there. So my brother's gardening products we put up on Amazon, and I started playing on Amazon with my other business partner, and we were putting a lot of stuff up there. So really learned how to navigate Amazon. And what's beneficial, like when you start early, is everything that every new tool that Amazon launches, you're the first to know. Yeah. And so as all these new tools came on, we were able to just say like, yeah, we want to do that, and we were quick to kind of adopt, and we had all our products out there, and so it was really easy to gain a ton of momentum. Back then, I was telling everybody, you got to sell on Amazon. Like, it's just like printing money, and I would have like small groups of friends that we gather every week and get together and eat junk food and talk about Amazon. And I was like, are you guys not doing it yet? Like, hurry up. But yeah, it was a lot easier then than it is now. But it was definitely beneficial because Amazon was where we really grew our cash roll, right? So being able to like get into it early and start selling was definitely helpful to build up those cash reserves to then do more fun things, and that kind of takes us into kind of future endeavors.
Yeah, and just logistics and shipping containers and all the fun stuff that goes into the unsexy stuff of building a physical products brand. So I think the really insane story kind of parlays now into Solo Stove, which, by the way, congratulations on that brand that you built. It really is incredibly compelling, both the brand and business, and then just the story behind it and what you did with it. So you go from selling mattresses to expats to chucking stuff up on Amazon and having wild success in literally the Wild West days of Amazon, the true Wild West days of Amazon. What made you decide to flip from Amazon to actually kind of doubling down focus on a specific segment and a specific brand and building out Solo Stove?
Yeah, I wish we could say like we had this grand strategic plan. But the truth is like, you know, and we were talking about this before, but like a lot of the good entrepreneurs you see, it looks like from where you look at them now that everything was perfectly planned out and strategic, but I think the honest truth is that a lot of it is just luck and chaos that's happening, and a lot of different things that are happening. And so we didn't have some master plan to create this great brand and this great product. It was a evolution of what's next. And we were doing gardening products, and I was doing a whole bunch of other products with my other business partner. I had done mattresses. And so my brother and I were like, well, we're not looking to get super rich here. We just want to, have supplemental income, and hopefully that grows to replace our permanent income, gives us our freedom and our time back, and we're off to, the beach. But we started to think like if we could just build like 10 businesses that were all doing $100,000, we'd have $1 million company. And that was like the dream, is like, we don't have to hit a home run with everyone. We just need to hit a single and hit a bunch of them. And so naturally, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs are this way, they think like, okay, well, if I did it here, let me pick another product. And especially on Amazon, because you're always thinking, what's the next product? What's the next product? And so we were in that mindset of what's the next product. So we had gone from, mattresses and to gardening products. We actually ended up selling like indoor grow lights because we thought that would offset the seasonality of gardening products. But lo and behold, like people weren't growing tomatoes indoors and they started like asking really odd questions that we were like, what? Like, why are you asking about the heat signature from the street of what these lights? And I was like, what does that even mean?
Oh my God.
And so we realized that people were growing, weed in their homes, and we were like, okay, we don't want to be in there. And so we stopped that. And we started trying to like think of what's the next product. And it was my brother, full credit to him, that he was like, we grew up camping in Canada a lot. And he was like, what about, camping products? And so he started dabbling and looking within that segment of like, what are some opportunities, and stumbled upon the category of camping stoves. And we just kind of dug in. We actually spent a lot of time on YouTube looking at people that made like DIY camp stoves, and just like people that were hacking together little pieces. And that was kind of the inspiration to get into the camp stove space. And that was so Solo Stove was essentially one of many ideas that we were ready to launch. And we did continue, even after Solo Stove, we launched other brands.
Interesting.
In Amazon, and we tried to bring them off of Amazon, or, so our mindset was like this portfolio of brands, and Solo Stove just happened to be one of them. But it was the one that grew legs.
Yeah, interesting. So I know a little bit about the story, so I'll kind of lead the witness a little bit. But you kind of, long story short, you started to scale the Solo Stove into kind of a low 8-figure business. It was just you and your brother for the longest time, I think up until low 8 figures, correct?
Yeah, well, we were doing so collectively, and not just Solo Stove, but like, online we had all these different brands, and I think in about 2016 we were, about mid to low seven figures in revenue across all of the stuff we were selling.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
And then you got to a point where like, hey, we've kind of checked the box of like replacing our income. We've got like this cool little universe, didn't even need it to be more than what it was. But you're kind of like, what do we do next? Let's kind of talk through the next chapter of the journey.
Yeah, it's interesting because most people would think like, go big, hire lots of teams. But the whole reason and the whole like when we started building this company, our whole like one of the main principles that we had was like, we're not hiring anybody. We don't want to deal with anyone. We're not good at dealing with anyone. I had run a team of like 20 people in China in that sourcing company, and in '08 I had to like lay them all off. It was a horrible experience, and I just felt like I'm just not good at. I just don't want to be in that situation, and I don't particularly enjoy managing people. I just like playing online, like looking at analytics and like diving into the data online. Where we were at that time, we built this business to just give us a lifestyle company, right? We bought into Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek book. Love the idea of it's not about getting rich, it's just about having enough to go live the life you want to live and not deferring that till when we're all 70. And so we really believed in that, and we got to a place where the business was doing well. We were making good money, and we kind of just wanted to have this great little lifestyle company. But that's when it was at this inflection point where it was just becoming more work than we wanted. And we worked a lot of hours, but we were very protective of our time. So when I'm saying a lot of hours, we did, we worked a good solid day. But when it started getting to where it was like, oh, you got to work 2, 3, 4 more hours than your regular 9 to 5, I was like, well, that's not what we like. We're going the wrong way here. And so we were very selfish with our time. And this business, we wanted it to succeed. And the truth is any entrepreneur knows that, the amount of work you can get done in an hour is tons.
So
you
true.
can get so much done, right? If you're working a day job and you do a 9 to 5, you're really not getting a whole lot done, right? You're just sitting around, you're looking at the clock, you're playing around. But if you're focused really on your own thing, you can do so much in a couple hours. And so we would work really hard in those hours that we were working, but we wanted the rest for ourselves and for our families. So we got to this inflection point that we had to figure out, like, what do we do since we don't want to hire people, and this company's kind of grown to a point where it's starting to take up more of our time. So that's kind of where we were at, and then we had to decide what to do, and that's when we started in about 2016 to explore selling it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got this business, you're like, hey, you become a victim of your own success at points in a business career, which is a good thing. You count your blessings, but it also forces decisions and different thought processes. So you're like, hey, maybe this is the time to take some chips off the table, sell it. Walk through that, what that was like. And again, this is 2016.
It's 2016.
So this is before a lot of the e-commerce exit marketplaces were available. Private equity didn't really quite know what e-commerce was. It was more blended operations that were predominantly retail. So how did that conversation go when you went to shop this thing to potentially exit, and what did that do to your future for the next couple of years?
Yeah, we had some friends locally that had sold a company, and to us that was like just eye-opening in of itself. And they had a massive success with it, but we were just like, wait a minute, you can sell a company? Like, this is how oblivious we were to anything in terms of like...
You really were liberal arts.
Yeah, I was like, wait, you can sell a company? Like, I've heard of this thing, but I never thought I could do it. Yeah. And it was never part of anything that I was ever a part of, in my career. So we were like, wait a minute, these guys sold a company. Like, do you think we could sell our company? And if we could, like, what would we get for it? And so we started to explore, and we said, let's see if we can sell this company. It's just me and my brother working out of our homes, and most of everything was outsourced, right? All the logistics was through 3PLs. We did most of the marketing and the customer service kind of as needed. But we sat down and said, let's see if we can get rid of this thing because it's grown into something we don't really want anymore. Although it's massively successful, huge, wildly profitable, great products and everything. And it was a mix of products, right? It wasn't just Solo Stove. It was We had a brand called Fox Outfitters that was more camping, just kind of private labeled stuff. And even the gardening stuff was kind of still around at the time. So we kind of reached out to some friends and called everybody who would talk to us and just asked people like, do you know anybody if we were to sell a company who we should talk to? And so some guys referred us to like some small business brokers, and some other friends referred us to some private equity guys, or not private equity guys, investment bankers of different sizes. Like one was a kind of a really small boutique one that we talked to, and then we talked to another one that was slightly larger. And we kind of had these phone calls and conversations with people about, this is who we are, this is what we do. We actually even went to, we have a friend who introduced us to a private, to a private equity firm locally here. And he said, you should go talk to them. We even talked to them at that time. And we went in and sat down with them and kind of showed them on paper what our business was doing. And they kind of just said, that's cute, that's cute. But, if you ever need any money, or if we're like, no, we're looking to sell. They're like, well, who's in this? It's just me and my brother. And they're like, no, it's kind of too small. And they even passed on it. And we talked to the other investment bankers, and they basically told us, like, it's not sellable. Like, what you have here isn't sellable. You have a company that's great for you, that generates money, but if somebody were to buy it, what do they get? And we're like, they get everything we put together. But that would require them to step in our shoes, or someone to step in our shoes and operate and do everything we were doing, which was everything. So me and my brother, they would have to come in and kind of do it. And to us, we were like, yeah, isn't that like a great thing? And they're like, no, this is not good. And we were like, what? Meanwhile, we were meeting at our third-party logistics office because we didn't even have our own office space. And so we actually asked them to borrow an office space, and they just were like, oh, okay, that's weird, but yeah. It was either that or like come to our dinner table. It was like, come to my home, sit at my dinner table, and don't mind my kids. But yeah, so it was really small and it just wasn't sellable. And that's what they told us. And we were like, oh, that's weird. And we were kind of surprised by that, really, but.
So then that starts the journey of, okay, well, we built this cool lifestyle business. We kind of want out of it because it's becoming bigger than we want it to be, or at least in terms of time commitment. Then the investment bankers are like, no, actually, that's not how it works. So you got to go build effectively a real company at that point.
Yeah.
So you then embark the next couple of years to really build a truly kind of actual business, I guess you could say, with the infrastructure, the people, all that stuff. Maybe walk through what that phase was, and then we'll get into the interesting stuff, which is the triple exit. But walk through kind of that next phase of scaling.
Yeah, so we kind of listened to the feedback that the investment bankers gave us and said, here's really what you need. And through friends and different people that have kind of gave us some advice, they said, you need to enterprise it. And we were like, oh, that sounds horrible. And I'll be honest, it wasn't the most fun. Like those years, and it could be fun to someone. It just wasn't fun to me, because I know what I like doing, and I just like I like being behind the computer and dealing with all the digital marketing, coming up with strategies. But it was really more about building out the infrastructure and the team, and that required to have an office space, to actually have employees doing the work, and to be able to set up systems and processes and get all of that up and going, essentially, creating a business that doesn't need me or my partner, my business partner. And that was the ultimate goal, was to remove ourselves from this thing, to have it keep going, to continue growing, and to be able to do better without us. And that's, it makes sense now. But back then it was like, oh, that's what we have to do. Like, we didn't think about that when we started, for sure. So we started out and we got an office space. Actually, we were so cheap that we started interviewing before we even got an office space, because we're like, are we sure we really want to do this? Like, let's not even get the office space. We interviewed, I remember these girls, we interviewed them outside of Starbucks. We literally put job offerings on Craigslist and LinkedIn, and then set up interviews in this public space outside. And I can't, thinking back on it now, I'm just like, man, they must have thought we were either weirdos or serial killers or something. Why are we meeting outside this shady, parking lot? And we would tell them like, we're gonna get an office. Like, could you imagine? Could you imagine like going to a job and like, we're gonna hire you, and I promise we'll get you an office. But that's what we did, and we just took it baby steps, and we got an executive office that was a tiny office. It was an interior, like we didn't even splurge for the windows. We got interior office, no windows. It was big enough for like four people, was even like stuffy. I think it was like 11 by 15. And we got this interior office and just started hiring people, customer service, and then like a graphic designer. And we just started slowly figuring out and really fumbling through that building process. Because I've never built a great team, right? The one that I managed in my previous life in a different company I inherited that. I walked into that and it was already done. So I had never built a team. I had never hired and trained. I had never dealt with people's personal problems or compensation or really understanding like what it takes to, build a culture, or like, it was all so new and not fun. Like that's the key thing, is like I did not enjoy a lot of that because I was not only horrible at it, it wasn't something that I desired to be great at. But we had to do it. It was the means to the end, which was very clear what we needed to do. So we started hiring and growing from there.
Really cool. So even if it was, I guess you could say, tripping or stumbling forward, which it sounds like those were kind of the growth spurt years, so to speak. Fast forward, you ended up really creating category-leading products. For folks that don't understand Solo Stove, I came from a brand called Goal Zero in the outdoor industry, similar, at least retail footprint and similar customer bases and stuff. Really was a category leader in the kind of camping stove, and then ultimately into the campfire, smokeless campfire space. So you end up building this category behemoth, this monster. So in those years, even if it was kind of challenging for you personally with your skill set, you built something truly special. And then the exit itch. So at least this time you now know you can actually sell a company. So you've kind of done that. You built out the infrastructure. Walk us through the exit round 2, which happened, I guess, was that 2019-ish?
Yeah, we sold to private equity in 19. And to fill in the gap, right? So we started in this tiny office. We grew the team. I think we must have had somewhere around 20 employees. We moved like 3 more times. Every year we were moving to a bigger location and growing the team. So, it ended up in a good spot to where we had our own fulfillment center, 50,000 square feet. We built out brand new office spaces in there. We brought all our fulfillment in-house because the 3PLs outside were just not cutting it, to put it lightly, and being able to keep up with growth. So we brought it all in-house, had a team, and we were hoping to kind of go to market in the spring of 2020. That was our goal. Build the team, build the infrastructure, grow revenue, grow our EBITDA, and we kind of had in our mind like how, what numbers we wanted to hit, and we kind of mapped out the timeline, and we were on pace. We were well on pace, and that took us to the end of 18. Rewind a little bit because it's important to know when we first got our first office and we decided to hunker down and keep growing, that's when we really launched Bonfire, which was the outdoor fire pits. Because we were like, well, let's keep product development going, because that was one of the things we for sure had to do. We had to keep growing this company and have new products in the pipeline. And we sat around and thought about Bonfire and designed that and put that together. And that was a great hit because we launched that in, I want to say, 2016, when we started hiring our first customer service girls, when we were doing it, and we did $1.2 million on Kickstarter in 30 days. And that was a great foray into kind of this next category of products. So teams built, products are going great, and we kind of are on this timeline. One of the key turning points is not only bringing on a team, but starting to think about the management team. Who's going to be the one to lead this? And we kind of knew that had to happen eventually, but it came sooner than we thought because things just got so painful. And I guess that's the story of like every entrepreneur, is like when things get so painful, you start to figure out, I got to do something. Like I got to solve this. This hurts too bad. And for us, it was managing people. It was like we weren't great at it and we knew it. we would split the teams in halves. You take marketing, I'll take ops and finance, and then it was like, oh, my people, I just don't, it's not working well. I don't have, you want to switch? And so we'd be like, yeah, let's switch. And then I would take marketing, and then my business partner would go into ops, and so it was just this, like, I feel bad in hindsight if any of them are watching, like, I'm sorry that you got stuck with a manager that really was just learning on the fly. Like, and those that did really well, there's still some employees there that were there when we hired on, and they were able to roll with the changes and grow with the company. And I'm so proud and happy to see them thriving there. But some just couldn't take that change, and for pretty much whatever reason they dropped off. But it was a tough go, and that pain led us to think about the management team. And credit to my brother and business partner. I remember thinking, like, this isn't working. Like, how do we fix this? And I was talking about maybe if we come up with a new system, or maybe if we implement this EOS a little bit better. And I just remember him sitting there thinking real long and hard, and he was like, that's not the root problem. Like, the root problem is us. And I was just like, I do not disagree one bit. And so we thought, like, the real thing we need to do is find the guy who's going to grow this team, who's great at leading people, great at growing teams, because it's obviously not us. And that's when we started searching, like, everywhere. We turned over every leaf and every rock to look for. We would talk with anybody to come lead this thing. We were looking for what we thought we would call a president. We were like, we need a president. But the guy we brought in is the current CEO currently, and we were able to go through many interviews with different people, just searching high and low. And when we talk with John, who's the current CEO, it was just like an instant fit, and we were like, we knew this guy is the right guy to lead the charge forward. And so we brought him in at the end of 2018, and then that next year, so heading into 2019, we actually were able to, like, take a vacation the summer of 2019, which was amazing. And that was the first time we were actually able to let go and hand over the reins. And it was painful. There were some painful times in there, but we were so ready to just let go of the reins. Where some, I think, might be, like, hesitant and want to hold on to them. We were, like, carelessly throwing at him.
No, you can ride the horse.
Yeah, it's like, you're good. But things would pop up, and we'd be like, okay, that was bad. But overall, it was a really good transition, and it's a tough one to make for most. I think for every entrepreneur, it's going to be hard to hand it off and think somebody else is going to do it as well or better than you. But the truth is, it's very possible. It's a lot more possible than most would think. So beginning of 2019, we got a lot of inbound interest from different groups. I think it might have been because we were talking to some bankers at the time, and they were kind of planting seeds.
Sure.
And so we would get these inbound kind of emails that I'm sure a lot of actually Amazon sellers are getting at this point.
We're getting them now, yeah. Not from that private equity, but it's certainly in the world of roll-ups and aggregators and folks looking at e-com centric brands. It's definitely starting to happen.
Yeah, and so I'm sure a lot of your listeners can appreciate the fact of, like, you're getting these in and you're like, what do I do with this? Do I really reply? Are they real? Yeah. Are they trying to sniff out my business and compete with me? And so we weren't really sure, and so we were like, let's just stick to our plan, our timeline. We had an investment banker who'd kind of followed with us. And was ready to pull the trigger when we were, and we were like, we're almost there. And he would check in with us every few months and say, like, where are you guys at? What's how have you guys improved? And we were getting closer and closer, and he knew it.
Yeah.
And so in 2019, when we were getting all this inbound interest, we kind of fielded it, but at the same time, we set it aside and said, let's just hit our goals. Let's just finish what we were planning to do, finish our 2019 Christmas selling season, which for all of us e-com sellers, this is a big deal, and get credit for it, and sell in 2020, which would have been COVID in the
January, December-ish was when it first came out. But Jan Feb is really when and you had no idea.
Yeah, we had no idea. Yeah. So we started talking with some groups in 2019, one thing led to another, and before we knew it, we were getting offers that were valuations. So enterprise value of into the low 9 figures. And it crept up, right? Started in 8 figures, and we were like, whoa, like that's a lot.
Yeah.
But we know what we were setting out, let's finish the task. And regardless of what the figure is, we were more set on finishing kind of our plan to enterprise this thing. And we were dead set focused on like, the product development, the team development, the infrastructure and all of that. We wanted it was just more a sense of like, finishing what we set out.
You want to bake the cake first.
Yes. Yeah. We just, we weren't sure like what it would do to valuation, but if this was our out and we were heading out, we wanted to do the best job possible to get this company in the best situation possible. Yeah. So we kind of pushed some aside, but those numbers crept up quickly from the beginning of 19, from like 8 figures, and then, then it went up to high 8 figures, and then, another private equity group came back and was like, it was in the 9 figures. And we were like, holy smokes, we're in the 9 figures of evaluation. And this is where we would dream we would have got to if we got through all our selling season. And, to what degree they were giving us credit for that fourth quarter based on our forecasts and projections. I think there was a little bit in there. Generally, these private equity groups want to preempt and kind of get in front of everybody before it becomes this kind of open bidding process. Yeah. So yeah, in 19, I remember I was in the airport coming back from Japan because we had traveled in Asia just for fun, and we were coming home, and the CEO emailed us and was like, I know you guys told me we're not playing around with more numbers, we're just heads down in the work, but I just want to let you know. And it was this 9-figure LOI, and we were like, wow. And I just remember freezing. I was pushing the cart full of luggages. Like, we were supposed to line up for tickets, and I'm just sitting there staring at my phone, being like, what does this mean? Right? We're still probably 6 to 8 months away from getting to where we wanted to after the selling season. And I was just thinking, like, this is it. Yeah. Like, this is happening now, and it's sooner than we want. So yeah, that's kind of where it started. That's for the
amazing.
First one.
And I think what's interesting about this story, because again, coming from a more down the middle e-com Amazon background, it really still is the financial multiple. That's how that universe is sculpted, at least right now. It's changing in some aspects. But when you start getting into these category leaders, these brands that have really kind of carved out their own part of the universe, strategic valuation comes into play. And it really isn't about some like EBITDA times some number of revenue. It's like, what is somebody willing to pay? And that's where these numbers stop you in your tracks in the Japanese airport, because it's kind of surreal and crazy. So you got that first one. Now you're like, okay, well, maybe we don't need to run Q4 out. Talk through the next little bit. And then this is really where I think the story just gets kind of insane from here, even more than it has up to this point.
So yeah, we I think we signed an LOI in like either July or August. Maybe it was late July, I can't remember. But we before we signed, we did run a little mini process. So we said, okay, it's in the 9 figures. I got back stateside, got with my brother, and we were like, what do? We have to do this. Let's go. Like, if we have this, because you have this one offer and you can't just let it sit there. And so we were like, okay, let's just buy some time with them and tell them we're going to think about it. In the meantime, let's spool up the bankers.
Might as well. One last straw just in case.
Spool up the bankers, have them go out and contact as many private equity firms that they can round up and who think or have really strong interest. And from my understanding, most of the time when companies go to sell, they travel out to these private equity groups and do this kind of road show. Well, for us, it was so compact. It was like, who wants to...
We got a fish on the line. Does somebody else want in on this?
Who wants to come? Yeah. And it's going to short notice. And whoever wants to come fly in last minute, we'd love to just pitch you. And so the management team, credit to them, they put together the whole deck, the financials. At that time, we had a CEO and a CFO. And our CFO actually came from private equity. Nice. And so he was really sharp and helped put together, round out the team. And so we put together the presentations, and we were sitting in front of, I can't remember how many we did, like 4 to 6 of them, management presentations for different private equity groups. So you'd have dinner the night before, and just casually, they probe you and ask you, their ninja questions that seemed really harmless, but they were getting like all the information they needed. And you'd have dinners with them, and then the next day you would sit down with them at the office for between 4 to 5 hours generally was the meeting, and you would just do your presentation. They would ask tons of questions. We would do the same. We would ask questions and kind of understand who they were, and it was just really matchmaking. And so there was multiple bids and offers, and the LOIs start coming in, and you start to sift through them, and you start feeling who's going to be a great partner, and eventually we settled with one. Then you go through due diligence, which again, credit to my team, they did most 99% of it. I think we got in where we could, but we were pretty useless at that point.
And that offer that you got was actually a different one that was even better than the one that you saw in the airport. So that process of turning over a couple of rocks, it bared some fruit.
Yeah, for sure. And it wasn't just the money that was better, it was the partnership, because we really felt the private equity group that we were going with had the support, had infrastructure within their own team to support the growth of Solo Stove, which I think was tremendous. And so pairing with the right people and not just chasing the highest bid is probably a good thing.
Which is super important because you actually retain some ownership, and this becomes really important because we talked about a triple exit. So you retain some ownership. Not only did you have this like earth-shattering, beyond your wildest dreams kind of number and a right strategic partner, you now got this earn-out. COVID happens, and I'm sure like there's that first, I would say 6 to 8 weeks where you're literally like, we could be 2008 again. Like the economy's collapsing, like, the world as we know it may be over, at least economically. Like, who knows what's going to happen? We're all in our houses. Little could you have guessed that the camping outdoors category, because no one could get on planes, people are getting into their SUVs and they're renting RVs or they're camping. So camping blows up and people can't go anywhere but their backyards. So campfires blow up. So the second era, post-COVID era of Solo Stove was even more insane than you could have ever imagined. So talk about the second round of that and what that year preceding that was as kind of having a slice of the pie, so to speak, post-exit.
Yeah, so we retained equity, sold the majority share and kept a minority share, and joined the board as an advisor. So me and my brother were able to kind of sit down with the board and advise on a quarterly basis and provide them with whatever we could to help support them. COVID came along, and like everybody, we freaked out and like, what does this mean? Is the sky's gonna fall? Like, hunker down, get ready to fire everyone. Like, I mean, this is just what I was thinking in my own mind.
Yeah, sure. I think we all were.
And so I didn't know, right? And I felt like at that point there were smarter people at the table. The private equity guys, they've seen a lot and they have a lot of different companies, and so they can kind of draw their collective knowledge. And so I was really leaning on them to kind of just, I hope you guys got this. Like, let me know where I can help. And like I think with most e-commerce businesses, not all, but most e-commerce businesses benefited from that. Benefited from the pandemic and from COVID, in that everybody was hunkered down and there was a lot of pent-up shopping demand that happened online. And I think Solo definitely benefited from that as well. And so growth was great, and things were all going good. The team was doing really well, and that from that first private equity hold, it was about, I don't know, 8 or 9 months into that first year of the private equity group owning Solo Stove, that there was more inbound interest. And
for round two.
And at this point, to be honest, I mean, candidly, me and my brother, we were just sitting on the sidelines. Like, we would go to these board meetings, but it was once a quarter, and we were only...
You're riding the coattails. You're loving it, but you're riding the coattails.
I mean, we don't know what's happening in the operations.
Sure.
Strategically, we heard of things from at the board meeting, but really we weren't in the weeds at all. And so we get this call from our private equity group and saying, like, look, here's what's happened, and we were like, what? And essentially, what it came down to was another private equity group who had knocked on the door and laid down an offer that was like very difficult to refuse, and it was many multiples of what had just transpired a year ago. Not even a year ago; it was like 8-9 months ago. And so, for me and and my business partner, well, I'll speak for myself. It was essentially, what? Tell me where to sign. Like that's pretty much how it went.
Yeah.
And it was a huge multiple, and we were well into the mid 9 figures, having just gone through, a low 9-figure exit a year prior.
Yeah.
And so that happened at the end of 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
End of 2020. So.
Again, I don't think it's like fairy tale stuff. If you wrote it into a Hollywood script, people would be like, hey, this is a little bit too much over the top. Dude that was selling mattresses in Asia, comes to the US, builds out these kind of hobnob Amazon businesses catalog, builds out this hobnob camping thing, which turns into a category leader, which exits once, low 9 figures, then a year later exits mid 9 figures. But there's more.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the triple dip, so to speak.
Yeah. So we again retained equity and rolled forward some. So we took
You sold a majority chunk. You kept a decent chunk out of the first round. That decent chunk turns into a really meaningful chunk when you've done some amazing things with the business and obviously multiple on top. And then you have a splice of that second round as well that carried into the third.
That's right. Yeah. Obviously, commonly referred to as the second bite of the apple. We took more chips off the table and rolled forward more equity as well, and stayed on, which at this point we were off the board. We came off the board. At this point now, we're totally passive investors. No insider information. We're not privy to a whole lot. But they grew and they did amazing things, and I think a lot of people who have followed Solo Stove have seen the massive growth and what they've been doing, and a lot of this is public in the S1 filing, that is that SEC filing that companies have to file to go before they go public. So a lot of this is in there, but they created their own strategy, and that strategy obviously included some acquisitions that happened, and so within that year of selling the second time, they made I think 3 acquisitions in that year, with Oru kayaks, Isle paddleboards, and Chubby's apparel, and grew into this holding company, and that now has 4 D2C brands underneath it, and in last October of this year, so October of 2021, they went public. So they filed the S1 and had an IPO, and I was lucky enough to be able to go out there with them to kind of experience those festivities and be able to stand on the podium as the CEO rang the bell on the New York Stock Exchange. So it was an interesting process to kind of see it unfold, and it's super exciting to watch them grow and kind of play out the vision that they have kind of set forth in this thing. So yeah.
Dude, I honestly and humbly, when I heard the story, and we actually had a conversation a couple weeks back, just kind of getting to know each other as YouTubers, and it really is one of the most compelling, not only business stories, but human stories that I've ever heard. I think a lot of us think of these interactions and these transactions as like these buttoned up suit dudes in New York and in boardrooms, where I'm sure there was some of that took place. But just a regular dude just wanting to literally have a little bit more free time and kind of break free of the matrix, so to speak.
Yeah.
Goes out and literally triple dips, 9-figure, 10-figure kind of public offering in New York. Really is. I hope somebody at like Harvard Business School writes up something on this as a case study, because it's pretty incredible. So taking a step back now, and we'll kind of get into what's next for you. Hint, hint, check out Spencer Jan on YouTube, because it's an absolutely incredible YouTube channel that you've created. We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
And I've kind of gone through this a little bit with my own exits and kind of discovery about myself and kind of life and business. Before you have success financially, you kind of wonder what it would be like. And I think you kind of fantasize about what it's going to be like, and what does it unlock? What does it do? And that vision, and when it actually happens, tends to be a different discovery process as you actually go through it. And I think you've gone through it in a pretty incredible way. I mean, literally, you want to talk about, FU money. You've experienced that in multitudes over the last couple of years and had a lot of success even before that. What does life mean now? And I think maybe this is a cautionary tale. Maybe this is motivation for other people.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to see, for somebody that's went through success at that level, not only in building a really cool business and kind of bringing other people along for the ride, but obviously having financial outcomes. Give us the human story on that.
Yeah, and before I dive into that, just to clarify, so when we did IPO, most people don't, and myself included, I didn't really understand what that process was and what it actually means. And so to clarify, it wasn't a liquidity event for me.
Because you got to hold on for a certain
period.
So
there's all sorts of lockups, but candidly, we want to see it grow, and so I did not have any liquidity on that third one, but it was a milestone event.
Fair enough.
That's pretty interesting. So just clarify with that, but yeah, thinking about like life after, I think that's the tricky part, is that I think a lot of people think of it as like life before and life after, when in fact it's just you, right? It's who were you before, that's probably who you should be after. And I don't think money should change that, although I think the world tells us differently, right? If you strike it big, suddenly you now have to go, I don't know, like fly in a private jet and wear different clothes and eat different foods and mingle with different people. But to me, I'm like, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, I just want to still be the same person, and not that I'm, eating ramen every night, but it's, I'm not making huge drastic changes. And I think that was one of the one advice that some people gave me, knowing that I was having these kind of events. People said, just take some time. Like, don't do anything with the money. Just sit on it, get used to it, and kind of get your bearings straight. And don't do anything crazy for a period of time. And I had another friend who gave me some great advice, and he said, you know what, money just amplifies who you are.
I love that.
So if you're a jerk, you're going to be a super jerk.
Yep.
And if you're good to people, this might help you be good to more people. And that really resonated with me, because I just didn't want to, I'm like, I hope, anything I do, I wasn't a jerk before. Like, if this turns me into a jerk, like, I'm going the wrong way. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting process. But I will say, and I think many entrepreneurs I know, I'm blanking on the name. Mike Smith, who was the CEO of Qualtrics?
And he owns the Utah Jazz.
Utah Jazz.
I can't remember his name either, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, so I remember watching or listening to a podcast with him, being interviewed, and he mentioned, when they had their liquidity, and I think
he
they
sold to SAP for $2 billion.
It was like $8 billion.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a lot of billions.
Yeah.
But I remember he was saying, like, he showed his wife the bank account when the wires came in, and he made the comment that his wife said, "Ooh, scary." And it's a similar feel when closing day happens. It's like, that's it? Like, we're done. And I have a picture of me and my brother, and I just took it because it was during COVID. And we were doing this remote closing call in his home, just me and him, and his kids running in the background, and the lawyers are all on the phone, and everybody's signing off on their final sign-offs and saying my signatures are released. And when it was done, it was just like super like anticlimactic. Like, it was just like,
it's exactly how I described mine.
It's like, that's it. And then you like walk outside and you're like, like, the world hasn't changed, confetti's not falling from the sky, and nobody's lining up to take your picture or anything. It's just like, that's it. Which is, I wasn't expecting anything grand, but I think it's, it just goes to show how much important the journey is, as opposed to kind of the end destination. So yeah, for whatever that's worth, that's
I've been doing a lot of thinking about this too, and I think, and again, it wasn't at that tier, but it was still super meaningful for me as an event, and I think it wasn't nearly as cool as I thought it would be, or like it didn't feel as good as I thought. Like, I don't want to make it seem like it was depressing event. It was just like, it was almost nothing, and I think in some ways that's really good, and I think it's really good for folks like you to share that story, because a lot of people chase it thinking that there's going to be something. Thinking that moment afterwards is going to be different than the moment before.
Right.
And it really is, it's an event in your life, but it doesn't define or really influence who you are as a human being.
Right.
And I love what you said about the amplification, right? Like, money is an enabler and it's an amplifier of who and what you are. So amazing story. I think it's really good for people to know, especially those that are chasing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. I'll contrast it with some of the highlights of when we were building, some of the things that I really remember as like amazing, just, cloud nine level stuff. Like one of them was when we just hired our first employee, we were running Kickstarter, and for years we wanted to be in REI. Like we just thought that would be the coolest thing for no other reason than we just wanted that badge of recognition, and we just wanted to be validated. It's almost like I wanted daddy to say like, I'm proud of you. Like that's what it would, like we were seeking validation, and we were like, man, REI is like the pinnacle for us. Like if they take our product in and it sells well, like we will have like won in our minds. And it happened when we were running Kickstarter for Bonfire, and I don't know what it was that triggered it, but one day we got an email in our inbox from the buyer at REI, and it was a really short email that essentially said, we love what you're doing, we've been watching you guys, we love what you're doing, and we want to carry your entire line. And that to me, even now, gives me goosebumps and tingles and just gets me giddy, because I was so pumped, and that was such an amazing feeling. And I was like, I don't high five much, but my brother was like, come on, let's do it, high five. And I was just like so pumped. I was like, we did it. And to me, that was such a huge win. And when I contrast that with like closing day of these 9-figure deals, it pales in comparison to what winning REI and just getting that email and just that feeling
I love
was.
It, man.
So
it's the things that you create and the people you influence, I find. Like that's what really makes it special. Well, dude, this is awesome. I mean, we could go on for 8 hours. I think one thing I'd like to kind of hear in closing from you, again, now you get to be like the burly veteran that like has all the wisdom and all the experience. Now you're not like the liberal arts major anymore. Going through that entire journey we just talked about, which is really an incredible story. And you're talking to somebody who was you in Shanghai, kind of ready to sling mattresses. Like you're speaking to that, Spencer, in today's universe of entrepreneurship and building physical products brands. What are some things that you think you can impart on others that could help amplify and improve their journey along the way? Words of wisdom, advice, etc.
Yeah, there's a lot of tactical things that you can get into depending on what situation you're in or what problem you're facing. But I think, generally speaking, the thing that the advice I would give to anybody starting or in it right now is, it's going to sound really generic in general, but honestly is a superpower, and it's just patience. I mean, if you look at our journey and how many years it took, we started in 2008 blogging. And then you look at 2021, 11 years later, you're standing on a podium while the CEO is ringing the bell on the New York Stock Exchange. And it sounds like, we can say it in one sentence, but really that spans 10, 11 years, a decade's worth of work. And I think, honestly, when I look at those who have come and gone and stuck around and succeeded, what I've seen is that pattern, is that those that stick with it, and it doesn't mean doing the same thing over and over, right? You're gonna weave and bob and figure it out and pivot and change. You're gonna switch from blogging to selling something to hiring someone. You're gonna do those things that you need to do for your business. But it really is time. Like, you can't make the tree grow faster. And I think a lot of people get enamored by people raising a whole bunch of money and saying, like, I can leapfrog this whole process. But I don't know if the average person like me, if you're like me and you don't have this huge background and you didn't graduate, a Harvard MBA and you have all this experience, like if you're just your average Joe, it takes time to learn. It's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination, but it does take time. Like, patience to stay in the game is really one of the biggest secret sauces that anybody could take away. Like, just be patient. Don't get so anxious to, this isn't working. If it's not working, change it and then do something else and just keep going. Like, look at any business. It takes decades to build. And so I think, if I were to talk to anybody and they were to say, what's the secret sauce? One, there's no secret sauce.
Of course.
And two, just be patient. Like, remind yourself every day, just what's the rush? Because it's when you have that huge exit, like you said, you end up back at the bottom building again anyways.
Yeah, especially if the end's not as glamorous as you think, and it's the journey anyway. Enjoy it and kind of settle in and enjoy the process.
For sure. Easy to say when you've done it, and everybody
Yeah.
will say that, but I mean, it's the honest truth, and everybody will have that experience when they get there, that you end up going back and finding that good journey again. So, you know, be patient, stick with it, learn and grow, and don't ever feel like you know it all, because it's a long journey. Yeah.
Love it. Well, cool, man. Well, we'll kind of cap it there. And I think what's really interesting about the world in which we live in today, and why I kind of love the new world of media, is the accessibility to stories like this, as well as the accessibility to entrepreneurs and human beings like you that have really built really cool stuff and are willing to kind of share that story. So for those that are like have the Spencer Jan bug now and love your story and want to understand more and kind of impart more wisdom from you on how to kind of sculpt and create their own journey, how do people kind of learn more about you? Where do we go next with Spencer?
Yeah, so I started a YouTube channel back in September, so brand new to the game, but I'm trying to put out content every week. So every Monday there's a video out there, and I'm just trying to get everything I know down and out and shared with everybody, because I think there's great learnings in there. At the same time, I hope to kind of just shed light on the fact that there really is no secret, silver bullet or special sauce that you need to be able to do this. And hopefully through my channel, I can inspire and educate people and really encourage e-commerce entrepreneurs to keep charging forward and to hopefully give them nuggets along the way. So yeah, check out my channel.
Yeah, and again, the world we live in, that's how we ended up interacting, is kind of through the YouTube universe. So
yeah, it's awesome.
So I hope you guys really enjoyed this. Again, one of the craziest stories I've ever heard. Please, the next thing that you do, at the very top of the description, as well as pinned into the comments, is going to be a link to Spencer's channel. I've watched every single one of his videos. They're incredible. They're 100% free. And where else in the world could you have access to somebody that's built something this cool? Versus just seeing his content, being able to interact with them in the comments. He's got hundreds of subscribers now. He's going to have hundreds of thousands in the years ahead. I'm guaranteed of it. So be one of the early ones. And again, it's cool to have access to a cool entrepreneur. Dude, thanks for having me into your office, your space. We're here in Dallas, Texas. Invited me with open arms. It was super cool to do this in person.
Yeah.
What a thing. My first YouTube interview in person. It's a little bit weird not staring into the Zoom screen, but I enjoyed every minute and second of it. And I think like me, my audience is going to get a ton of value out of your story, and thanks so much for sharing it, man.
Yeah, for sure. If there's anything I can do for your audience, happy to help where I can.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.